Welcome to another episode of Monitor's podcast series, where I speak with Shawn Smith, Chairman and CEO of Dedicated Financial, about how business can be a true force for change. In this episode, we discuss servant leadership, company culture, and why real leaders must take action to inspire change. Plus, Shawn shares how he and his team at Dedicated Financial organize yearly service trips that transform communities and the lives of those who participate. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you about Monitor Suite, the data, research, insights, and information to power better business decisions. We recently launched a new searchable database tool designed to help you quickly and efficiently discover businesses that are actively expanding, providing insights into their growth strategies and capital needs. With countless other information readily available for subscribers, there is no content resource for equipment financiers of all levels that can make this kind of weekly impact on your business and in your career. For more information, visit suitebymonitor.com. Let's also take a moment to hear from today's podcast sponsor, Stripes Leadership Program. Stripes is the premier leadership development program tailored for the equipment finance industry. Stripes' 6-month program launches with a 3-day intensive transformational program and provides immersive training delivered by recognized industry leaders and best-in-class leadership experts. The program is designed to foster lasting transformation on both personal and professional levels, delivering immediate, measurable results through hands-on business workshops, group coaching sessions, capstone projects, collaborative cohort groups, one-on-one program coaching, and more. The next cohort begins May 13th, 2025, and seating is limited, so act now. Learn more about Stripes by visiting stripesleadership.com. Well, hello, everyone. I am Bree Wilson. I'm joined today by Shawn Smith of Dedicated Financial to discuss the ways in which business can influence real-world change. Shawn, before we begin, can you take a moment to introduce yourself and Dedicated Financial?
Sure. Shawn Smith, founder and CEO of Dedicated Financial GBC, located in Shoreview, Minnesota, about 5 minutes north of Minneapolis and St. Paul in the Twin Cities. We're just about to turn 10 on January 10th, and I've been in the industry for just over 20 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Shawn, as I mentioned, we're together today to discuss how business can truly shape the future and change the world for the better, which is essentially Dedicated Financial's mission statement. To start, I'd love to know about your personal journey and what led you to have this vision of business having the power to change the world.
Big question, and I'm great at short answer in a long format, so I'll do my best. And in the industry, I think a lot of folks have heard a little bit of my story and that type of thing. Is this a topic I'm passionate about of community impact and giving back and using business as a platform to change the world? But what really drives that comes from my life experience. And it starts out, growing up with a good portion of my life on the welfare system, sponsored Christmases, food shelf, food insecurities, things like that. By 8th grade, I finally got shipped over to my dad, who, was more stable with post office income. So I always thought my dad was rich because my dad and my stepmother at the time both worked at the post office. So to go from welfare to dual income was a wild change. I mean, we had food. I think I put on like 40 pounds the first year I lived with my dad. And so high school educated, had options to go to the Marines, into college, or move out of the house within 2 weeks of graduating high school. And so I chose the third and joined a rock band and did that for a while. And at 22, shifted. I had gotten into the collections industry, and I had started my own marketing company. I had thankfully got in contact with some mentors that were multimillionaires, had been married for a long time, really had a lot of different good things going on in their life. And they gave me some really critical advice at that time that kind of shaped that dramatic change in the direction and trajectory of my life. And so that experience, and obviously there's a lot more behind all of that. As someone who went through basically every form of abuse as a kid, and was bullied heavily, and dealt with a lot of mental health issues as a teenager and a young adult, right? So all of those experiences really shaped um, at 22 as I got that mentorship, and I also became a person of faith, that I started looking at the world through the lens of the me's out there, and wanting, and seeing that my life was so dramatically changing. And it was changing because people were willing to invest their time and energy into me. And I really started wanting to become that person to other people, because I was so thankful to have it myself. So, um, yeah, so that kind of is the ramp up that gets us here. Um, as it pertains to dedicated, specifically giving back in the way we do that, I had saw Tom's Shoes and other companies um, doing this, kind of one for one. Like, you buy a pair of shoes, you give one, you get a vaccination, you give one, and I just thought, like, wow, what a crazy concept. Like, that's gotta cost so much money to do that. And how do you even do that in business? But they were doing it. And so when I started Dedicated, I had just gone down to Haiti I think I'd been down there by that point 3 or 4 times. And I knew if I started Dedicated, I wanted to do something like that. And so, but at first, you kind of bet the farm to start a company. So we started donating one meal for every deal we collected, and so on and so forth. And it just kind of grew from there. So a lot more I could impact there, but that's kind of the genesis and the evolution that brings us to Dedicated. Is life experience, going through a lot, really seeing the needs out there in the world that just needed a hand up, that were willing to take that hand and run with it if it was extended, and really trying to be that as best as I can be, and that's just grown from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a leader of change and someone who is so passionate about giving back, what qualities do you believe are essential for fostering such leadership?
I think, look, we have a big problem with leadership in our world today, as it pertains to corporate America, and specifically to our industry. One, everything ends up being like the good old boys club, right? And it creates this ceiling that just crushes spirits. Um, you're not in the club unless you dress a certain way, or act a certain way, or your skin's a certain color, or your gender's a certain color, or whatever that is. And so that automatically, even before we get to leadership, um, you have to embrace diversity and embrace change. And we have a lot of folks that are, I think, in the later half of their career, that are holding on to those things, right? And really um, demotivating the folks that they lead, because they hear one thing out of their mouth and they see another thing, right? Um, Secondly, uh, we've grown in this society where the haves have so much and the have-nots don't. The middle class is, I mean, it really feels like there isn't one, or is greatly diminished. And then as you look at that within companies, you see companies making obscene profits, and yet treating everyone like a number. And um, you don't see servant leadership. You don't see putting people before profit. You don't see companies trying to be a significant impact in their team members' lives. And so it starts from the top down. We have a major leadership issue where people are taking as much as they can get for themselves. And part of that's hard because leadership is hard, and it's easy to become jaded. It's easy to feel slighted when, um, it's like the store owner that someone steals a loaf of bread to feed their family. You can look at that two different ways. You can look at that with empathy and say, that person's trying to feed their family. They were raised that in a have to do situation, this is what you do. And, empathize with them and try to help them. Or they can look at them as, a thief and a bad person and these type of things, right? I think what's happened with our leadership in corporate America is that often leaders, because people like myself who come from a different thought process than the thought process they have that often got them to where they're at, it creates this separation where there's no empathy to understanding where someone came from. There's no reaching out that hand. And if it's reach out, it's reach out once. Oh, they didn't take it or they didn't do anything with it. So, whatever. And, so leadership is challenged in continuing to fight that fight and reach down to try to help. And really, corporate America specifically, it is pretty broken. I mean, you see companies are rated as the top company to work at this, or they made some rating, and that was because they paid to be there. And this is just evidence of, again, we're so lost that I feel like what Dedicated is doing and some other folks, even within our industry, we end up being the exception to the rule when what we're doing should be the rule. And these toxic environments should be the exception. And it's unfortunately not the case. And I hope to be a part of a movement that changes that. And I think that will be driven by people getting sick and tired of being treated poorly, getting paid unfairly. Um, I think as the next generations come up, not only will they not tolerate the lack of diversity or inclusion, but they will mandate change, right? And so those are the good things coming, and I hope to be a part of that. But it is challenging, right? And you have to be up for that challenge as a leader, or you shouldn't be a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great transition into my next question as well. In your opinion, what are the foundational elements of building a business culture that embraces change and positively impacts its community?
John Maxwell said that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I subscribe to that. I think it's at the root of all other leadership concepts and ideas and things. So, the kind of, if you're working hard, you're as a leader, especially as a servant leader, your people are going to see that and they're going to respect that and you're going to have influence. So, if you can't influence people, you're not a leader. You may have a title, but you're not a leader. So it starts with the ability to influence, and that starts with serving. A servant leader is the leader that's out front. And we have a lot of positional leaders in this world right now because they knew someone, because at one point they worked hard, they were a leader, and now they're kicking back. And so that it starts with that ability to serve others and put others' needs before your own, and you have to keep coming back to that. I think you have to be able to be open to feedback, and as a leader, it is extremely hard to get feedback these days because it's almost a joke within companies that there will be no retaliation if you provide any feedback because people's egos are so weak that the level of kid gloves that you have to put on to give any feedback in this world, because we live in a world where seemingly everyone has a glass jaw and can't take any form of feedback, and I have to dig and fight and ask for it. And I say this all the time, but I have a couple of key people even within Dedicated that are willing to give me open and honest feedback. And the value on that to me is extremely high. Do I like receiving it half the time? No. Is it delivered to me in a pretty package all the time? No. Do I always agree with it? No. But I really try hard to foster that environment, and I don't always do the best job at that, but I do try. We need leadership that fosters ways to get feedback. That can be through anonymous surveys, that can be through one-on-ones, that can be through open door policies, that can be with no retaliation policies. In the end of the day, though, I would say this: if you're a leader, especially within an organization, meaning you're not the leader, but you're a leader. I used this example recently with someone. Rosa Parks had to decide that even though she was going to be the nail that stuck up, that she was going to get hammered for it, that it was more important to do the right thing than it was to sit there and live in a life of quiet desperation and segregation, right? And in this world, to move the ball forward, to create change, you have to have the courage to stick up. And in the end of the day, humans retaliate in some form or fashion almost always when they don't like what they're hearing, whether it's passive aggressiveness or now I don't like you or whatever, right? And while I fight really hard not to be that as a leader, and I encourage my leaders to do the same, we're all human beings, right? And so I think you need to foster an environment that courage is displayed and rewarded. And that is a battle. Even at Dedicated, where we're hyper intentional, it still feels like we're failing half the time in doing that. And that's hard because people are messy. It's that simple. I'm messy, you're messy. We're human beings. And it's like somehow we've gotten in this situation where we think people are just supposed to be robots and do as they're told and show up and do everything perfectly. And then when they don't, you know what I mean? And you have to, I think another pillar is fostering an environment of grace and excellence. And so those two have to be at tension. And I like the word tension. I use it a lot at Dedicated. If you give too much grace, it's an all grace environment, there's no accountability. And so no one's producing at the level, you don't feel like you're going anywhere. But if it's all accountability and there's no grace, it's just excellence, right? Then it's a super toxic, environment. You're not treated like a human. If you do anything wrong, if your kid's sick or whatever it is, right? There's no flexibility, right? That's hard because we live in this world now that is advocating that you never compromise. It's just, it's my way or you're evil or bad, right? And so fostering an environment that compromise and middle ground is important. I think sacrifice and submission are two really big words. If a leader and leaders are not willing to sacrifice for something bigger themselves, and they're not in submission to a greater mission, if we're just all here for the paycheck, you're going to have a revolving door where as long as you're paying people the most, I figure, well, this is the best it gets. So I'll deal with it. And I'll have some peer friends or maybe one manager I like. And, and that's kind of corporate America today, right? But if you look at companies that are really doing leadership well, the team is in submission to something bigger than themselves, and the leaders and everyone is willing to sacrifice something for that.
As we likely have viewership who are not in leadership positions themselves, what role do you see employees playing in driving a culture of change? And how can leaders empower their teams to think bigger in this way?
Specifically, it's really important that you as a team member are dogmatically displaying the things that you want first. Leaders are always leaders before they get the title, and then they're given the title. And often in our culture today, we say, well, when you pay me, when you do this, then I'll do that. And until then, my attitude is up for interpretation on any given day, right? can't ever put that person in leadership. So you have to be setting the example beforehand. And here's the thing, easy to set the example or be positive when everything's going right. Organizations and leaders need to be looking at when times are tough or when you go through valleys in any given area of the business and leading people, that's when you see what you have. And that's as a person and as a leader of your team. How does your team respond? And I don't think we place enough value on that as leaders. We sit there and look at when the times are good and we judge off that. That has less bearing in my mind than when we go through challenges and I see how you react to that, because then I know there's always challenges in business. What do I have? And so, and specifically for leadership, you have to be exemplifying what you're wanting to promote, right? And what you want. And if you're not, then it's on you. I think we have a problem in America today where we're constantly looking down and looking at where all the issues are in the business. And we're not looking enough at the leaders and saying the issues start there. I heard a funny analogy used that if you look at a family and one of their kids is kind of an odd duck or a big challenge, right? Probably the kid. If all the kids are challenges and odd duck, it's the parent. I think we live in a society today and work in one where you have leaders that look at their cultures and their teams like they're the problem as a whole. That means it's a leadership's problem. And so for your executives, your CEO, your presidents, things like that, you need to be looking at that, I think, in a specific groups and going, is this leader kind of painting their team as the problem? Or do you have one challenging person and the second they start to talk like it's the whole team, they're the problem, and you need to acknowledge that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what strategies have you personally used to ensure that your team members feel part of the mission to create meaningful impact?
So I love that question. I think that's probably one of my favorite questions that will probably get asked, because I truly believe what Dedicated is doing is something that can change the world. And my hope and my dream is to be a part of a movement that creates these changes. And I'd say specifically, if what I say next, if you really listen to it, I believe it can become a competitive advantage to you as a business, because it has for Dedicated. So specific strategies. One, you have to have a mission greater than the business. You'll have a lot of employers, business owners, C-suite leaders talk about how many jobs they're providing, how many people they're helping by providing a job. And I do think that's great. Don't get me wrong, I'm not dogging on that. But there's more to that than just that, okay? And so if you are a paper mill factory or a equipment finance company or a service provider, and your mission is just to grow the business, to make more money and employ more people, guess what? So is everyone else. And that's toxic in 90+% of the places, in my opinion, okay? So specifically, getting a mission that's bigger than you. For Dedicated, we want to influence the world to change the way business is done, and not just by talking about it, by doing it. So how do we do that? So one, our mission is to give back and help people who are in those least of these situations, and at a sacrificial level. As leaders, one of the key strategies is you as a company need to make the decision to strategically make less than you could so you can give at a higher level, and then bring your team into that giving. So how do you do that? Tie giving specifically to their work product, to what they're doing, their daily tasks. So the better they do, the more you give. Then bring them into the giving. Allow them to make the decisions on where the giving goes. What are they passionate about? What organizations or sectors of the world at large that's in need could you give to, and let them make the decision on where that giving goes. So have a giving strategy, have it be sacrificial, tie it into the marketing, branding, and mission of that company, and have it be bigger than just we provide jobs and we grow so the shareholders make more money. And that takes sacrificial giving. So that's a key strategy. Second key strategy is that sacrificial giving has to start internally with pay and benefits. So Dedicated does things like unlimited chiropractic for you and your family, cover gym copays. We cover all mental health copays. We cover like snacks, fresh produce, soda, juice, coffee, unlimited in the office. So if you need something for energy or a snack or something to help keep you focused, keep you energized, taken care of, that's on the company. We cover 75% of medical, dental, and vision, 100% of short and long-term disability, etc. I mean, we do a 7% now 401k match, which is all but going away in a lot of the world today, right? We cover Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University for our team to go to that. We have free financial planning, etc., and kind of a track for people to kind of grow financially. We have a chaplain that comes on staff so people can take time on the clock once a week if they want to meet with someone. They're struggling with something, they need someone to talk to outside of their counselor, coworker, peer, friend, or family. We have access to that. So we look at our team holistically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and go, how can we invest in them? So that giving starts internally, and that is part of our mission, right? And so starts there, and then we give outside those walls. So you have to set that example. You have to give sacrificially. And so those are specific strategies we use. Is you're going to have a hard time asking for the hand if you don't have the heart. And most companies, if you were to survey people within a company that feel like the leadership and the ownership actually cares about them as a human being, I think that'd be a pretty low score. We're also we're transitioning now to a platform, but same process, deal called Culture Booster. But basically, the way we're doing it is we want insights into how people are feeling. Are they feeling cared about? Are their goals clear? Is their leadership serving them and helping them? And do they have like proper equipping and the support, the budget, the whatever you need to get to your goals, right? We're surveying that quarterly to look for low scoring marks or discrepancies between what the leader thinks and what the person they're leading thinks. So we want to know that. We want that feedback. We want that data, because if we're off, if someone's like, nobody cares about me or Dedicated, well, that's not our mission. Well, we got to lean into that, right? But if you don't know that, then you're just doing a gut check or going, oh, we're good, or oh, my leader says it's good. Well, your leader's paid to tell you it's great, right? So that's not real data. Having an open door policy, things like that. I think also transparency. Half the time, stuff that happens at a company is the higher ups come and say, okay, this is what we're doing. And people are sitting there going, what the heck? I think this is stupid and not even the best way to do it. Second of all, like, where's the heads up on that? Or, if the company's succeeding really well or struggling, like, are people brought into that? And do they know the honest truth? Or do they just get sidelined with layoffs at some point or what, right? So being transparent, servant leadership, sacrificial giving, starting with a team, having a mission bigger than you. These are the reasons why companies retain, are able to recruit. And quite frankly, for us, it's been a reason that we're going up companies that have been around 30 plus years, have given us a shot and trust us, because really at the end of the day, our clients, it's all about trust. Do they trust us with millions and billions of dollars worth of their portfolio to manage, to collect on, to do repossessions? Do they trust their brand to us? And when they can see that we're mission-minded, that we're giving back, that we put our team first, I think those are specific things that we've done that have had a, I don't even think saying having a dramatic impact on us is fair enough. I think they have been the defining things that have led to our growth and us being who we are.
I'd like to transition to something Dedicated Financial does externally as part of its mission to change the world. And that's to organize and host yearly mission or service trips to an underserved community. I know this year it was the Dominican Republic. So can you tell me a little bit about the history of this yearly trip and how it came to be?
Yeah. So the genesis of that is actually my wife and I getting a quarrel over going to church on a Saturday night because we were going to a Vikings game at noon on Sunday. And so we couldn't make the 11 o'clock service, and neither one of us were going to make the night. Well, I'm more of a morning person. She's not. We were not going to make the morning service. So I ended up going to church by myself. And afterwards, I hung out. I'm like, we're gonna be talking about missions afterwards. If you want to hang out, I'm like, sure, why not? I'm just trying to get the positivity going here, you know. And at the time, uh, I was kind of in this yes phase where I was kind of saying yes to everything because I was kind of in my early 30s. I was in collections. It was not the plan. The plan was to build big marketing companies. I built two, sold the first one off. Second one, I had huge concentration risk with one big client. So when I lost that client, I was back to kind of having little to no business again. So I was kind of sitting there, I'm like, I'm in my early 30s. I've moved up in collections, but I feel like I'm an entrepreneur, but I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And I'd say to anyone who feels stuck in that situation, there's a million examples. You can restart, you can start from any point in life and do anything you put your mind to. And for me, it was my early 30s where it was kind of a restart where um, they went through. My church had 7 different places they go in the world, and I had been to Jamaica with my dad once, and we went into the interior of Jamaica, which you get away from the resorts, you get into the cylinder block houses and the dirt roads, and much more third world feeling. And it was like, I remember being shocked by that. Like here I was on, like the Sands Resort or something. And then all of a sudden I'm like, are we in danger? You know what I mean? Like, right. And so when Haiti came on board, I just felt like punched in the chest, like you need to go there. And I'm like, nobody has time for this, man. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I got a kid. At that time I had just my oldest. I have 4 now, and I'm going, wow, I don't have time for that. But I'm like, I need to go. So afterwards, a gentleman, Dale, comes up to me and he's like, you're interested in going? And I'm like, yeah, somebody's like trying to get me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't have time to be gotten right now. So maybe someday I'll go. And I think that's most people's response even to our trip is like, that would be awesome someday. Life's too busy. I don't have time for that. God, it's so awesome. I'll contribute. I'll donate to going. And we appreciate that. So many people in the equipment finance industry donate to our trips. I could name names, I won't, but so appreciative to that. But my encouragement would be is like, hey, if that's where you need to start to get more information and learn what we're doing and get it to where our calendars align and you can plan far enough in advance, come with. So this guy's talking to me and I'm like, nah, whatever. And then he goes, man, I just really feel like you're supposed to go to Haiti. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, all right, I'm going, sign me up. So I came home and my wife's like, oh, how was church? I was like, that was great. I'm going to Haiti. What? You know what I mean? Like, and anyway, we've been paying attention to Haiti. Haiti's been a challenging place basically since they took it over for themselves against Napoleon, right? So, I mean, it's a challenging country. If you happen to have any Haitians out there, manje benio. So I love going to Haiti now. I go there regularly up until COVID, and then the government being overthrown and gangs have kind of taken over. And so for right now, we've switched over to going to the DR. But I went on that first trip, and if you've never been exposed to extreme poverty and third world level extreme poverty, it is life changing. I truly believe God allows your soul to be broken and your heart to be broken over that. But what he helps rebuild that back into is something more beautiful. And I liken it to those who've had a child, and you realize the second that child's in the womb and the second that child comes out, that your capacity as a human to love something increases. You have another gear you didn't even realize was there. I think it's the same thing for going into the third world and seeing extreme poverty and serving there and touching it and smelling it and it just changes people's lives. To me, outside of my faith and my wife and my kids, it is the greatest gift I feel God has ever given me. And from the start, from the very start of Dedicated, the dream was to provide a sponsored trip for team members and people in the industry, and quite frankly, anyone connected to me or us, um, a way to go down to Haiti and right now the Dominican. Yeah, it's my way of giving what I feel is the greatest gift that was ever given to me outside of those other things to other people. And the greatest thing is watching it change people's lives within our industry. It's been incredible. Team members, I mean, it's just the coolest thing. And it's so fun. It's such a range. It's such a roller coaster of emotion. In 1 second, you're having so much fun playing with the kids. The next second, you see something that breaks your heart. The next second, you're connecting with another team goer and how they're processing and maybe something they're struggling with, and you can be there for them in that. The next thing, you're celebrating a big win with a bunch of people. I mean, there's just such a range of things you go through on these, right? It's super cool. So, we try to remove any barriers. So if someone has a financial challenge or a PTO challenge or whatever it is, Dedicated, we offer an extra week of VTO or a volunteer time off, as long as it's taken in half day or more increments to go and serve. So you can use that locally or come up internationally on the trip. And between us and our sponsors, we help fill any financial gaps that people can. We ask people to raise money, not because honestly, most people in our industry can pay for the trip. The reason we ask them to raise money to go is because when people invest in your trip, mentally, they're saying, I'm investing in this trip, I'm helping out. And even more so than when you get back, they want to know about it more. They put their money into it. They're like, hey, tell me, I put my money, so I want to know how it went. How did it change your life? And that so often leads to them then going and then them getting that gift. And it becomes this ripple effect that goes on far beyond me and Dedicated, right? And so that's kind of the reason for asking for donations, even if you don't need to ask for a donation. I think there's a humility factor in there as well. That's good for everybody. Because even if you don't need the money, maybe people donate to your trip and you can take that money and give it to the things you see down there, right? So yeah, so every year we go right now in August, usually the first couple weeks, first week, 2 or 3 in August. Um, and, and eventually want to go to 2 a year, but it's showing team members and the industry, hey, when you're working with Dedicated, you're working at Dedicated, you're doing more than just collections or portfolio management or HR or your job. You have the ability to change lives. And to us, it's a cool trip. Often the people we're serving, it means everything to them. Sometimes it's very often life or death for them. And so I've got stories for days on that, but come and see. That's what I say. Hey, come and see. You never had a person, and I've been going down for first trip was February 2013 now. So over 10 years I've been going down in the third world. Never had one person say, man, that was a waste of my time. Man, wish I wouldn't have did that. Right? Like everyone's like, wow, that was life changing. And so why not be a purveyor of life changing things that are for the good, right? So
Yeah.
hope that answers that. That's the best I got there.
Absolutely. And it's not solely dedicated financial leadership and team members who get to attend. And you spoke to this already, but can you tell me the extent of who is or who can be involved in the trip? And how big was the group that visited the DR this year?
I think our first trip was 12 people. I think the trip this last year was 14 people. I think like we have a list right now of like 50 plus people who are interested in going. It comes down to scheduling often, right? We cap the trip at about 18 people max. When you get bigger than that, it really becomes hard to connect as a group. You almost have to do two groups which you can do same trip and two groups are going, maybe we'll get to that point. I mean, this next trip, it's wild, after this last trip, the number of people that we have continue to get interest. Hey, I want to go. I want to go. And we want you to come. So it's everyone. It can be someone from the industry. You could be a client. You could be a service provider. Bring your spouse. Bring your teenager with you. Really, I think 13, 14 and above, it has impact. I think you go below that. They're just not mature enough to take enough of it in, right? To fully, and just in general, sometimes you're doing more laborious work, or it can be longer days, things like that. Or quite frankly, there's heavier topics being talked about that wouldn't be appropriate. And when you spend some group time talking about stuff, but really anyone. I mean, I sometimes mix friends in that want to go. I mean, it's designed specifically to be called a service trip and not a mission trip, for the fact that it's a very inclusive group. You're not going to have religion pushed down your throat. Is it going to get talked about? Absolutely. I mean, what people go through and what they experience and how it challenges them in different ways, everyone's going to have a different experience, right? But I specifically designed it as a service trip to go and serve people in need, that anyone is welcome to join and encouraged. Trust me, if you have a will, we'll find a way to get you there. And just come and see. That's what I say. Come and see, because I promise you it'll be a life-changing thing for you, and it will never be something you regret ongoing.
Absolutely. And you did speak to this next question as well, but why does Dedicated Financial organize and host these yearly trips? What are the ultimate goals that Dedicated sets for visiting these communities?
Yeah, so people often say like, oh, they'll say like, I work for Shawn or I work for Dedicated, and I'll correct them gently and say, technically yes, but man, don't lead with that. You don't work for me. You work for your family. You work for your goals, your dreams, things that are more important than me or a company or a corporation. And I love the fact that I feel like there's an awakening happening in our world today, where there's so much access to information, right? That people are not falling for the same nonsense. We can't be lied to anymore. We can't be having BS thrown at us in a corporation or through the media, because the second we go and look through it and fact check it, we find out that it's nonsense, right? And companies, people, and leaders are being exposed for that. And Dedicated, to me, wouldn't be who we said we were if we weren't the same people behind closed doors that we were out in public. And so part of that is living it and getting out there and serving people, sacrificing our time, energy. They say you have your time, your talent, and your resources, right? And are we setting the example by actually doing it? There's twofold goals when it comes to impact as it pertains to your question. One is, I've gotten to be a part of seeing lives completely transformed and saved. It wouldn't even be, I couldn't even go into it without probably welling up. It's that tied to my soul, as far as being so amazing what we've done, right? And so one is keep doing that and do it more. And the bigger Dedicated gets, the more we'll give, the more impact that we'll be able to have. So that's the part we can control, is just keep doing more, keep giving more. The Dedicated really operates at this point almost as a for-profit charity. And I think that's a pretty cool thing that business should strive for. How much is enough for the leaders? How much nicer cars, bigger boats, bigger houses, more travel do leaders need until it's enough? And the answer is, it's never enough if that's what's filling your soul and your life. But if there's something greater than that, if helping others who are in need is part of what's filling that, what ends up happening is that hole at the bottom of your bucket gets a lot smaller. It doesn't drain as much, and the energy and the heart and the passion that you have grows and increases. The joy that you experience becomes eternal, and it creates a ripple effect that goes into those others' lives around you. And you start to see marriages transform and lives transform, and people get healthier spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally, all because they went on a service trip, right? And so what ends up happening is you end up shining as a business and as leaders, and you start to create this magnetism in towards people saying, I want to do what you're doing. And it's hard because it involves that sacrifice. It's hard up front, but it makes life easier long term. Versus it's easier to say, I don't have time, I can't do that. But that ends up making life harder long term. There's a saying, easy, hard, hard, easy. You can do the hard thing up front, it makes life easier long term, or you can do what's easy up front, it makes life hard long term. That's like living below your means or anything else, right? So the second part to that answer that question is that Dedicated wants to be a part of inspiring the world of business to start giving sacrificially, starting internally with its team, but also externally to its local, national, and global community, recognizing that we're all human. We all go through pain, struggles in life, and by whatever reason you want to call it, I'm blessed to be here in Minnesota doing well when others are struggling and even dying locally, nationally, or a 4-hour flight from here, right? And I can do something about that. And if it was my child, if it was my family member, it'd go to the ends of the earth to help that person. And what happens when you do that and you give back in that way and you help someone in a way they can never repay you for, the joy, the sense of fulfillment that comes back to you, you find out that you went down there to help and they helped you tenfold what you feel you could ever do for them. That's kind of what I go with Haiti is I went down to Haiti to give back to a country that's in great need, and trust me, they're in great need. And what I came back with was a gift that I could never repay, but I will spend the rest of my life doing everything I can to say thank you the people of that island of Hispaniola and to God for blessing me with that gift, right? And that guy telling me, hey, I think you're supposed to go to Haiti, right? So yeah, I hope to help change lives internally, but I also hope to continue to inspire a movement within business that hey, take a little bit less and change lives with it. And trust me, you'll get more fulfilled. You'll experience more joy, peace, love, and happiness, and so will your people. And if more people did that, perfect example, over 3,000 billionaires in the world, roughly 296 countries, I think. It's not a resource issue, it's an allocation of resources. Those billionaires themselves could get together and absolutely end starvation in less than a decade in the world if they wanted to, right? So how can we inspire them to do that? By doing it ourselves. And that starts with sacrificing and being in submission to something greater than ourselves. So I hope that answers that.
It does, absolutely. And as a final question, what is one takeaway from our discussion or one piece of advice that you would give to our viewership who is interested in positioning their business as a real world change agent?
You are who you surround yourself with, right? And if you surround yourself with people that only care about how nice clothes you have, how nice a house you have, your status, your title, your income, it's a pretty shallow life. And it's not a matter if the challenge and the pain of life is going to come, it's going to come. None of us get to circumvent that. But who you have around you is going to matter, especially in those times. And I have found that the three-legged stool to truly the life that I didn't even know I wanted, but know now that I want more and more of it, is one, surrounding myself with people that build me up and don't tear me down, that are dedicated to something bigger than themselves, care about. Two, having a relationship with God and knowing that there's something greater than just me, and that has a major influence. I can tap into that power and that love and that grace. And three, that nothing beats hard work. And when you combine all three of those things together, you can be an unstoppable force. One of the challenges I feel like as a leader, almost sometimes I feel like I'm on this island. And it's like, it felt like for the longest time, like there's just nobody on this island that cares about these things. And even if they say they care, the second they're asked to do some action around it, you know what I mean? Too busy for that. The cool thing is, though, is that I can control that I work hard. I can control that I give. I can control that I serve. I can control that I love others and truly care about them and sacrifice for them and be in submission to something bigger myself. I can control that. So those are the things that I will, only things that I will take credit for, is that I'm willing to work my butt off towards those things, and they provide more joy, fulfillment, and satisfaction than anything else in my life outside of doing those very things for my wife and kids and my family, right? But tapping into having a relationship with God and choosing to surround myself with people that build me up, that support me, who give me grace when I screw up, because as I've said, I screw up all the time. I'm a horribly imperfect person with the best of intentions and not always the best of actions. I spiral like any other person, leader, at times where I get into a negative headspace, something goes wrong, and I just beat myself up for it because I care so much. But I have people in my life who will remind me who I am, who will remind me of the truth. They'll remind me how much I'm loved, how much I'm cared about. They'll remind me of the exact opposite of whatever challenge is going on that I think is horrible at that time, right? And so, man, if I could leave anyone who's actually made it this far in this podcast, choosing to do those three things and going all in. You're playing poker, all in on the chips, man. All in on working hard. All in, and that's not working hard at business. That's working hard at your family. The grass is green where you fertilize it. Putting in the work spiritually, putting in the work physically, putting in the work to have a good emotional headspace, relationally, right? Put in the work, tap into a God that loves you and cares about you, who can give you more power than you could have on your own, and surround yourself with amazing people that will remind you when the world tells you stuff that's not true or tries to beat you up. They're there to remind you what the truth is, because they know you behind closed doors. They know what you're about. And if you're a business owner and you're a leader within a business, you do that and you start helping people in a way where they can never really repay you for that, you'll experience joy like you've never experienced, satisfaction like you'll never experience, confidence like you've never experienced, and you'll realize you really can do anything that's on your heart and in your mind to accomplish. May take longer. I mean, I started building businesses at 22. It just turned 22 and I'm 43 now. So 20 and a half years of doing this. And before that, I was always kind of entrepreneurial and I have funny stories around that. But people talk to me now and without knowing anything about me, and they expect I'm college educated, was raised in a good family, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, how about government sponsored housing in the projects? How about every form of abuse? How about, food insecurities and food shelf, etc. Right? Like, I break all of the reasons why people say they can't. And all those negative things that happen to you and all the garbage that comes in this world and in business and in a job or relationally, they can either become the reason why you can't, or they can be the fuel as to why you will. But you determine that. So if you're getting pushback at a job, you're getting pushback within your company, if the process is arduous to change to a giving model towards helping your people, whatever that is, know that it's worth it and that it's not going to be easy. But on the other end of that, you start to see, now I don't feel alone in that island. Now I've attracted people that island. Now I've got clients and friends and industry friends, and we're doing our 10-year anniversary gala coming up here, and I got people flying in from all over the country, team members. I've got people from my high school. I've got friends, family, all of these people coming who believe in what we're doing, who supported it. And there's so many people I can't make it. It is January, Minnesota, so no harm, no foul if people couldn't make it up for that. But it's worth it. It's worth it to do what I'm talking about. And it's not easy. It's hard. It's harder than taking the easy path, but it's so worth it. And I'm always available. Anyone could reach out to me on any of these topics. You will get my time. I am not too busy for anyone at any position in the company. You could be a new administrative assistant at a large finance company, and you could be the CEO. Whatever your age, background, motivation is, if these are things that have touched base with you, I will always make that time, because it only takes one person saying, you know what, these are the reasons why I will. And I believe already Dedicated has fed close to 2 million kids, helped over 400 slave children, donated in the 7 figures, right? If I can do that with my background, anyone listening to this can do anything. We've already changed the world a little bit, but with thousands of other businesses doing what we're doing, we can change the world, right? And how do we do that? Businesses have the greatest capacity. They need to not just be about profit and their own success, but put people first and chase truly being significant. And if we can get a group of companies that are willing to do that, and a group of leaders to do that, we can eradicate hunger. We can stop so much of what's going on in our world that is simply a resource issue, allocation of resource issue, and ultimately a heart issue, right? So I hope it's been of value and benefit. If folks have made it this far, and I'm always available to talk more about it, because it truly has changed my life, and it's changed so many people that are now on the island with me, saying, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to do things like this. We want our work to mean more than just a paycheck, more than just a company earnings statement, right? So I welcome anyone into the fold, and I'm always available to talk more about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shawn, for the conversation today. And of course, thank you to our viewership for listening in as well. And we'll see you in the next podcast.